We begin this second part of Disc 2 by heading down to Jericho. We'll be going through the same area we have several times. In fact, we'll go through this area 6 or 7 times. So we'll just be showing the highlights right now. Soon we're approaching Jericho, and we'll be entering another country again. This will be Palestine. Note on the signs that it says that Israeli citizens are not supposed to come into this area because it's controlled by the Palestinian Authority. First we come to the famous sycamore tree where Deborah was assaulted by the street vendors last time. But this time we won't be getting off the bus. This is the highly traditional place where Zacchaeus was up in a tree when he met Jesus. After leaving the tree, it's time to go get something to eat. And then the obligatory shopping trip, this time for glass in a special shop in Jericho. Now we come to the Mount of Temptation, where Satan said if Jesus would bow down to him, he'd give him all the kingdoms of the world. This was his third temptation of his wandering in the wilderness. Quarantel means 40 for the 40 days. A church was put on top of this in 340 but has been destroyed, and a monastery has been built there in 1895. Only 2 monks live there now. About 20 years ago, the Palestinian Authority put in a skyway tram so it made it easier to get up there. Notice all the caves? These are what the monks used to live in. And then they built this monastery along the wall, but still live in the caves.
Well, it seems you have really been getting around since we last met. Was not the Temple Mount special? Most people who visit Israel do not get to visit it. Then following the footsteps of Jesus through Jerusalem as he headed to be crucified. Wow. Touching the rock his cross stood on must have really inspired you, and then to see the tomb he rose from. The good news is that it is empty. Then down to Jericho and all the history here of God working with his people to give them a place to live. I guess that is like Jesus dying on the cross to pay for your sins so you can go to heaven. In this case, God brought down the physical walls so there was a place for his people. Then jumping ahead 1,000 years to the time of the destruction of Jerusalem and the Essenes living in Qumran. I hope that you are having a wonderful time. I hear you will be coming back this way tomorrow going to the Dead Sea. Have a good night's sleep.
And of course Deborah has to pet. And then it's time to ride some camels. Let's watch the fun. On the way out of Jericho, we passed the tale of Old Testament Jericho. It's 50 feet tall, 10 acres, and had 18 layers on it over 8,000 years. But due to very poor digging techniques, didn't know how to do it back then, most of the top layers are gone now, washed away the Israelite areas. You're probably walking on the Canaanite areas, most likely. It's called Tel El Satan. And it probably looks something like this in Joshua's time. This is the site of Joshua's first battle in the Promised Land. Note that they just walked around it, didn't really fight, and the walls came tumbling down. Mud brick walls have been found that collapsed, but there's huge controversy over the dating of them. And there is one thing here, a 7,000-year-old building. There was a watchtower, but not much else, so we don't stop. There's also the spring of Elijah, where he purified the water for the people so they'd have drinking water here. And now we drive back through Jericho and look at some of the modern stores there. And then it's time to head out for Qumran. Along the way to Qumran, we get our first look over at the Dead Sea, the northern end of it. We also get a look at Cave 1, where the first scrolls were found before they started finding all of them. Qumran is actually the name of the Wadi by it. We don't really know what the city name was, and we wait to go in and watch a short film and look at the museum before heading to the archaeological dig.
Well,
11 different caves were found to have scrolls in them. They bathed often in ritual purification baths called mikvahs, and they ate a common meal together. And this is how their pottery bowls were found, crashed in the storeroom. They had a scriptorium where they copied scriptures. These are reproductions of the tables that they used. It was a 2-story building, and they copied them in the upper story. and this might have been what it looked like as they were dictated and copied. They mainly lived in the caves around this area, and this is what it probably looked like as a reconstruction. Water was central to everything here, and this is the route we're going to follow as we go through it. This was made before there were walkways. The first scrolls were accidentally found in this cave in 1947, and then a frenzy set out to find more. 11 different caves had scrolls in them. After a short lecture in the cool, we head out. They lived in these caves and only came to the central area to eat and work together and study together. This again is what it looked like, and there are no living areas in this, only work areas. And here we start to see their mikvah baths that they used for ritual purification, and the water channels that they flowed water through. You cannot carry the water, you have to flow it through naturally. As we continue to walk through the area, we see cisterns and other things that they used for holding water. They came to this area about 70 BC before Christ, but an earthquake in 31 BC destroyed the area, so they moved to Jerusalem and lived there for a while, came back in 1 BC, and the Romans destroyed the entire thing in 68 AD. Down near the shore of the Dead Sea is Ain Fresca. It's an area of freshwater springs that maybe they raised crops. This is the room they stored all their pottery in for eating, and over here is their dining hall. Over there is the Dead Sea, and the other side is Jordan. We'll be over there in just a few days. And this is Cave 4. Most of the scrolls were actually found here. And another view over at Ain Fresca. You can see the green vegetation. Wherever there's fresh water, you can have life in this area. No fresh water, and it's just a desert. And here's the hotel we'll be staying in just a few days. And now it's time to head back to the bus. We stop at the pottery workshop to look a little bit. This is where they made the pots they kept the scrolls in the caves. And here's the kiln they fired them in. Past a few more mikvot baths. They seem to be everywhere here to keep the ritual purity, and this is the way they might have looked as they were bathing in them. And now we head back up to Jerusalem along the same road we've taken several times, and we'll take 3 or 4 more times before the trip is over. But every time there seems to be new flocks or new something to see. And then through the tunnel and out to see the city again. Tonight I'll be going to the night spectacular at the Tower of David, the light and sound show. This is the Tower of David as it looks today. We'll be sitting here and it'll be projected on all of these walls. The Tower of David is from the time of Herod the Great. It was part of his palace. He built it as the southern end of his palace, and it was left by the Romans, and today you can sit in it as night falls. We get ready. As we head there, we have a street musician playing for us. They're also starting to project pictures on the walls of Jerusalem as we arrive. It'll be projected on these walls, and this is what it looks like before it's starting to be projected. It'll be a history through Jerusalem of music and pictures, not much narration. Let's get started.
זאת ירושלים, בתוך הגויים שמתיה וסביבותיה ארצות.
This is Jerusalem, which I have set in the center of the nations, the countries all around her.
אם אשכחך ירושלים,
I forget you, O Jerusalem.
אם אשכחך ירושלים. על נהרות בבל, שם ישבנו גם בכינו.
And this brings us what is obviously the end of day 7, and another end also.